Yana Taboso, the author of Black Butler, enjoyed breaking or at least putting a twist on gender stereotypes in her art. We can see this happen repeatedly in the manga and anime of Black Butler with the choice of clothing, hairstyles, and the character's choice of language and behavior. During my research, I found various Tumblr posts claiming that the author originally designed her Jack the Ripper as a female to put an interesting new spin on the story of the infamous and never truly identified killer from 1888. But is this true? Was Grell Sutcliff originally designed as a female? Okie pokey weirdos, I'm Rev, and I've been cosplaying Grell for 12 years. Back in 2013 when I started cosplaying the character, I had only watched the English dubbed anime and had only gotten a couple of books deep into reading the English translation of the manga. In those two iterations of the Black Butler story, this is me placing watchable media and readable material in two different universes. Grell is referenced by the other characters through the use of he/him pronouns. Therefore, I used he/him pronouns for Grell at the time, and so did many others. However, in Season 1, Episode 5, Chance Encounter, Grell did reference themselves as an actress.
After all, I am an actress. And quite a good one at that.
And a lady. And times have changed. So, almost 20 years after the first chapter of the manga was debuted in G Fantasy magazine, what are Grell's pronouns?
I alone control her.
Good, Deadpool.
You come for me. You come for her.
So sorry. I know it's pronounced him. I'm gender blind. It's my cross to bear.
To satisfy that little teaser I left in the intro, I give you this interview. Oh, hang on, that's in Japanese. I guess that'll work for anyone who can read that, but I cannot, so there we go. Hopefully the translation is reasonably accurate, fingers crossed. This is an interview taken soon after the 2015 Black Butler musical with one of Yana's editors, Kuma Takeshi, who is quoted saying, "The Jack the Ripper case is still unsolved, and the culprit has not been caught." So I thought, how can a butler catch someone like that? From there, I profiled the culprit in a manga-like way, in my own way. The victim was a lady of the night whose uterus was taken. And since the case was unsolved despite several male suspects, I came to the conclusion that the culprit must be a woman who cannot give birth. And so the character Madame Red was born. In G Fantasy, a character who faces the protagonist is more popular if he is a beautiful boy with silver hair. It's a female character of a certain age, but since I created him as a profiler, I didn't distort that. I thought he might not be popular, but instead I asked Taboso to just go wild with his partner. The Grim Reaper Grell. With jagged teeth and red hair, the character is pushed forward. Yeah, the English translation was not the best. Mr. Taboso? Also, Madame Red is even referenced in the translation with masculine pronouns. The reality is, Yana and her team often use neutral or no pronouns at all, and the English translation commonly defaults to masculine. Can you see where this might become a problem later? Also, their Twitter bio has this too. Taboso and his staff will tweet work information, hobby doodles, etc. Then the interviewer asked, "That episode happened about 9 years ago. So are there any regrets you can find when you look back on it now?" Sometimes the things I intended didn't work for the readers. For example, Grell is a character that is a high-tension theatrical Onisan, older sister. So I made him thoroughly plain before revealing that, and I also tried to contrast him with Sebastian as a useless butler. But if you count the number of frames, it doesn't come out at all. I thought I had drawn it just by apologizing in a very small frame, so when it became an anime, I asked the scriptwriter, Mari, to write an episode that emphasized that he was a useless butler in a form that was almost close to the original. It appears we're looking at a situation very similar to Han Shot First from Star Wars. There is this argument behind if Han shot first because George Lucas rehashed and made so many new cuts of the movie and put the new variations into re-releases that it depended on what version of the movie you watched for if Han Solo shot first. Spoiler alert! In the very first cut of the original movie, Han Solo was filmed as shooting first. This is to say that Grell has had enough changes and new iterations, especially during an age of budding social media and self-expression, that plenty of people saw the iteration of Grell from 2008 in the dubbed anime without being informed on the original concept of the character and what other forms they took during development. In reference to the creation of the whole manga, but this also works very well in respect to Grell specifically, editor K said, "It was like we created the story once and then added more. Thinking about it now, it wasn't a very clever way to do it. However, it has power because we put a lot of effort into it. For better or worse, it's packed with power in its own way. Therefore, using he/him pronouns for Grell when only having seen the dubbed anime is not so much the speaker being maliciously transphobic, as it is a sign of the times of when the anime was dubbed and also what time period the show is set in, as well as the speaker being undereducated on this matter. It's easy enough not to know that a character has transitioned or come out in some way when you haven't been keeping up with the series." Now, if you are ready to dive a little deeper into the evolution of Grell's character, let's get to it. During my research, most of what I could find were 2017 Tumblr posts with very aggressive arguments, but no real sources for where people were finding these facts. It was also not very helpful that Yana Toboso had so many deleted tweets and blog posts because those would have been a tremendous help to put this concept into her own words. I did try emailing the author, but using the link on their website, her name is no longer on the fan letter list, and I was sadly blocked from contacting them through Twitter. X. Since I could not find any other forms of contact through their website, it seems the creator simply wants to be left alone to create her art. And I mean, same though. So, while the attempt was made, I do not personally have a direct answer from the author. Instead, I will be puzzling the few pieces I have available to me together, doing my best to create a timeline on Grell's character evolution from what little is still available online after almost 2 decades. It's not going to be perfect, but let's see what I can manage. Back in 2019, I started using they/them pronouns. This bled into how I referenced Grell, usually alternating between they/them and he/him depending on who I was talking to, the same way I personally alternated between they and she depending on who I was around. You may notice I was a bit slow on figuring out gender myself. But cut me some slack. I grew up in the deep south, out in the middle of nowhere, where there were only 2 options, and if you said otherwise, you got shot. And that's terrifying for a little kid. Especially this one who was labeled as a tomboy, but I knew that didn't quite fit me. I'm here now, and I'm all in, identifying as gender fluid. I'm trying to keep myself educated the best I can, while also helping educate others on what I've learned. For a long while, that ignorance was protection, which is why it's so important to educate first. We are not demanding or flat out calling someone stupid on this channel. You will be blocked if you do such a thing in my comments. A 4-year-old is not stupid for not knowing how to drive a car. It takes time to educate, and sometimes it takes people a little longer to learn. Sometimes they have to grow into it, which takes longer. Sadly, there are those who have been taught and are choosing to throw that knowledge in the trash and to continue with an archaic understanding of the world. But when it's somebody simply asking an honest question online, you don't know which one they are until you actually talk to them. If they're a dick, block them. Get them out of your life if you can. But I personally get really excited when someone asks and honestly wants to learn. They/them pronouns made more sense for me personally as well as for Grell, in my mind, because I felt both our genders were more ambiguous, leaving room for interpretation. And that's why I love this character. This form of self-projection onto a character is actually quite common, and even more so for those of us who are neurodivergent, do not feel like they fit in very well, and have a habit of getting hyperfixated on a character or topic. Hi, I'm the problem, it's me. To quote Natalie Greeny from AMHS News, self-projection involves heavily identifying with a character and sometimes even adding personality traits onto them in your mind as a way of feeling even closer to them. Remember those Tumblr posts I mentioned? In most of them, people say that either the author or one of the other creators involved in making the manga, anime, or even musical stated that Grell had one identifier or another, but none of them had any actual sources or references to where they got this information. Their argument being, just trust me. Therefore, self-rejection is what I originally believed was happening with those Tumblr arguments, because the largest majority of those claiming Grell as trans were trans themselves. I thought they were attaching their own identity of trans to this character in order to feel even closer to the character, as I did with using they-them pronouns. And there is nothing wrong with that, but I found it very uncalled for that so many people were aggressively demanding others accept what seemed to be their own headcanon, because they had no proof from a canon source identifying Grell's gender. This could also include a matter of fans taking over a fandom once the fandom reaches a certain age, where our current identities are not represented or respected by the project. And the headcanon's becoming widely accepted because they make sense to a modern audience. Although, there are a couple exceptions to the rule of not citing your sources. Say hello to our wonderful Chibi and Aku. These creators' Tumblr posts saved my butt in researching this topic. They really helped keep me from having to dig through old posts, which are in Japanese, which I would have had to use Google Translate for, and that does not always work well. Or consistently shuffling through the Wayback Machine, hoping to find what I'm looking for. So I would encourage you to look at their material as well, because while I'm putting this topic into my own words, I will heavily be referencing a lot of their hard work, because they screenshotted and translated a large number of the author's original Twitter and blog posts. P.S. If you find any of Yana or her team's original posts or interviews that I do not reference in this video, please link them in the comments, because I would love for this to be more of a community project, where I can make a part 2 including all the references you wonderful weirdos can find. Back to Editor K's interview. With the choice of Jack the Ripper being a female, those assisting in the creation of the manga felt that Yana would be missing out on too many common anime-style stereotypes that would help the reader make sense of the story. Madame Red was more or less fleshed out already, so Grell was created as a foil and a counterpart. They were two parts of one whole. Yana even mentioned in a now absent Twitter post, posted in 2018, they are like sisters, like partners in crime, a lady and her servant.
Sisters, sisters, I'm here to keep my eye on her.
Then the creators got further criticism from those working for G Fantasy magazine. And it varies on why Grell's gender was changed depending on what reference you look at, but the two most common options, and I have a strong feeling it was probably a combination of both of these, are: what? Grell as a woman? But we can't have Sebastian beating up a girl. That would look bad. Or, but no woman would be able to rival Sebastian. He's far too powerful for a girl to even put a scratch on him. Oh yeah, a story where a demon can screw a nun, but can't hit or be hit by a woman. Sure. Religious stereotypes? Throw them in a dumpster and set them on fire. But gender stereotypes? Let's dress you up so you look all nice and pretty, but sit right here and don't move or say anything. Ever. The sexism is strong with this one. But this was 2006 in Japan. That was the sad truth of the society at the time. Thus, Yana chose a common gender-related stereotype, which is now seen as a product of its time, to claim a middle ground on the character of Grell. To adhere to these sexist concepts that were expected by the magazine and readers, while also still challenging them in a way, Yana defined Grell as an Okama. Now, I might be slightly off on the translation or understanding of Japanese terms and cultures here, because I am an American, and it's much easier to understand any culture when you've grown up with it or at least live in it. But I'll do my best here. To simplify the concept of Okama so we don't have an hour-long video just about Japanese homophobic stereotypes from the very early 2000s, Okama encapsulates the archetypes of gay and feminine man who might also be a cross-dresser or a drag queen, a gender fluid or flux person, or a trans woman. This word was essentially used to say non-heteronormative or queer. There was really a lack of queer terminology for LGBTQAI+ in the Japanese language back then, so Yana had limited options. The term Okama appears to have a similar backstory to queer as well, because it was commonly used for a time, then became a slur, and now I'm finding that more recently it seems the queer community has taken the word back, using the term as openly and as lovingly as English speakers who are non-heteronormative use the word queer. Making Grell and Okama meant that Yana would be using the Oni Kotoba dialect for the character's speech. As a really rough translation, this term means words being used by an older sister. This being a form of speech where people who were considered to be gay men would refer to themselves in the feminine. The only time the author ever referred to this character as a man was in a deleted post made sometime between 2006 to 2009. I cannot find the actual post, and dates vary between references. Yes, Grell is a man, but has the heart of a maiden. Otherwise, the characters referred to Grell with neutral or no pronouns, and Grell always referred to herself in the feminine. This left Grell's gender more ambiguous, giving the options of them possibly being trans, non-binary, or gay, but no definite answer as to which in the early days. There's also the fact that not all Okamas are trans, and not all binary people use they/them pronouns, so Okama gave Yana some wiggle room to play with the characters since they were not forced into the binary, leading to more of a spectrum. The ambiguity also lent to the humor of the character in their scenes, especially in the English translation, with characters using he/him pronouns to refer to Grell, but then Grell regularly calling herself a lady. You could never be sure if the lustful Reaper was joking or if she was deathly serious. It gave us a good laugh back then just before the 20-teens, but eventually things began to change. Our understanding of gender identity changed. A difference between sex and gender was becoming more common and more widely accepted. For all of you science nerds out there, here's how Women's Health Research from Yale defines these differences. In the study of human subjects, the term sex should be used as a classification, generally as male or female, according to the reproductive organs and functions that derive from the chromosomal complement. Generally XX for female and XY for male. In the study of human subjects, the term gender should be used to refer to a person's self-representation as male or female, or how that person is responded to by social institutions on the basis of the individual's gender presentation. In most studies of non-human animals, the term sex should be used. These working definitions were a good start in recognizing the value of studying sex and gender and their interaction, yet they were always meant to evolve. Now, we are learning more about ourselves, and so must adapt our terminology to be inclusive, respectful, and more accurate. For example, while most people are born biologically female or male, rare biological syndromes can result in genital ambiguity, or a resistance to a sex hormone can result in traits typical of the opposite biological sex. I love that even the scientists were like, this is the definition for now, because everything is always changing, and y'all being politically correct is hard. I personally prefer the definition from Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood explains the differences between sex and gender. According to them, sex is the label assigned to you at birth, male or female, based on chromosomes and biology, while gender is more complex. Gender is society's set of expectations, standards, and characteristics on how men and women are supposed to act. But I had to grab this definition from a quote in Iowa State Daily, because while doing my research, Planned Parenthood was having a 403 forbidden error, a sign of our own times, where informative websites are at the risk of being taken down because their philosophies do not agree with those of our current political leaders. Which brings us to why this conversation is so important. I've seen plenty of arguments stating that Grell is just a fictional character, and it's not that deep. I myself even enjoy playing with the thought that because Reapers in the Black Butler universe are created due to someone self-canceling, Maybe gender does not even work this way for Reapers in their universe. But what we are experiencing due to our changes in the political climate in 2025 demonstrates exactly why gender needs to be discussed and understood as an ever-evolving concept. It is not so much about Grell and Grell alone. The conversation about Grell is a jumping off point, because this is about the trans community and how it has grown and changed over the years, having to fight and claw it all the way. The terminology is different than it was 20 years ago. There are so many more options for identifiers, pronouns, and the acronym for LGBT, and so on, just keeps getting longer. For those who refuse to use she/her pronouns for Grell and claim there's nothing wrong with sticking with he/him, they are undereducated and stuck in the past. While some do not, I also accept they/them for Grell personally because Yana's pronouns used for most characters in the manga are neutral. For those of us who are trans and firmly use Grell's she/her, we ask those stuck on he/him, if you cannot accept the pronouns of a fictional character, how could you ever come to accept my pronouns? It's a simple switch, like when misgendering a cat or a dog. But when the being you're gendering becomes too human for you, you can't even muster up an S in front of that he. What happens when you're looking at an actual flesh and blood person right in front of you? Will you still respect their pronouns? Or is it not that deep? Because this is what it feels like when someone finally gets your pronouns right. If you do not think it's important, then you're not someone who has experienced people refusing to accept you for who you are. Okay, back to Grell. In 2007, we saw Grell as this over-the-top, flamboyant, and ambiguously gendered Reaper with a massive crush on Sebastian, and them being at a power level capable of harming this gorgeous demon. But then the character disappears from the manga after chapter 12, returning for chapter 55 in 2011, seemingly having become a completely different character. So, what happened between 2007 and 2011? Based on my research, the change appears to have officially started in 2009 with the Black Butler character guide. This was a book separate from the G Fantasy magazine storyline, and Yana had a little more freedom in its creation. I continuously saw in various online arguments that this book was where Grell blatantly states they are a trans woman. So I found the book free online and, well, Google Translate to the rescue, huh? I know it's not gonna be perfect, because, I have a feeling Yana used neutral pronouns here, and the translations are defaulting to he/him. Again. Crap. Okay, let's give this a try anyway. We're seeing a lot of language similar to the dubbed anime. He/him pronouns, but words like actress, woman, and maiden are also used. One of the lines reading, "A wide range of expressions are introduced, from the expression of a maiden in love to a poisonous smile befitting the Grim Reaper." Nothing too different from what we've already been experiencing and what has been causing these arguments. Oh, wait. Self-proclaimed lady, huh? That sounds more like it. This reminds me of something that would be said if the vocabulary for trans terms was not as widespread or known. Let's keep reading. Isn't it every woman's dream to try on a flashy dress that makes her want to go out? I want to wear a bright red wedding dress. Do you normally speak in a feminine manner? Of course, I'm a lady, so please refrain from using harsh language. Without saying anything, she acts cute and feminine. When I was a butler, I didn't get to wear my makeup, but I had a nice hairstyle. I don't feel like going out anymore. It makes me feel depressed. During work, I put up with the makeup and fashion. This person is dissatisfied with not being a woman. I can only think God made a mistake. So what I want to do right now is make a sex change. I'm serious. It's interesting how before Grell gets to talking about her sex change, the translation reference her with he/him pronouns up until that page. Then the pronouns change because there's a stronger reference for the translator as to what pronouns are being used. In these pages, Grell talks about going shopping, wearing dresses, and how they make her feel joyously feminine. She even mentions how she identifies as a woman and would prefer to be referred to in that way, punctuating these thoughts with a mention of physical transition. However, a number of people have trouble accepting this book as canon. I initially did as well, thinking it was something outside of the Black Butler franchise, largely due to knowing that Yana didn't have as much of a hand in the creation of this book. It was mostly her team. However, she was adamant about making sure that everybody's favorite flavor and favorite scent were perfect. So if something like this was incorrect, she very likely would have had it changed. She did have the last say. During my research, I was finding that this seemed more and more legit. I started seeing this character guide as something like the Deadpool fix, where this was the original Deadpool from '91, then we got this guy, and then it got fixed in 2016.
Hey, just cleaning up the timelines.
By moving him into a completely different franchise. This was the original design of Grell in early 2006. Then we got this character in late 2006, and by 2009, we got a book adjacent to the original series where we went back to the original Grell.
Just cleaning up the timelines.
Why Deadpool's adjustment was more easily accepted than Grell's has more going on there than I have time to explain in this video, but if you disagree with this book being canon, there's still 16 years of timeline here. Grell disappeared after chapter 12 due to Yana realizing that she was having Grell play a stereotype in an attempt of avoiding one. In the early 2000s, it was commonly and easily accepted that characters who were non-heteronormative in our pop culture media were crazy. Grell took this insanity to a completely new level, and that was largely why a lot of us love this character. But Yana didn't want to continue imposing an outdated stereotype to her audience. For 4 years, the character vanished from the manga because Yana wanted time to develop Grell into a more modern representation of what Yana's original plan had been, making them into a character that would better represent the community Grell was a part of. Therefore, she appeared as almost a completely different character when she returned, and there was more development still to come. This disappearance and change in portrayal also worked in-universe, because Grell was back with the Reapers, being punished for her misdemeanors on Earth, so that she would change her behavior. Yana admitted to having some confusion about gender in a post from 2012. This post revolved around the holiday traditions in Japan relating to Valentine's Day and the gender roles accompanying those traditions. To overly simplify it, Japan has a tradition on Valentine's Day that girls give the boys chocolates one day and then the next day the boys will give gifts in return. She admitted it was difficult to place Grell in either gender role because while she felt Grell was more feminine, she did attempt to draw the character more masculine for the holiday. There was a bit of a disconnect and misunderstanding in gender, but also the difference between gender and sex. Due to this confusion, she flat out broke the expected gender roles in her art, drawing some of the female characters to represent the masculine-related part of the holiday, and drawing some of the male characters while representing the feminine side of the holiday. Then we fast forward another 3 years, because Grell disappeared from the manga again until 2015. This was another Grell hiatus in an attempt to make her more blatantly a trans woman, without trying so hard to shoehorn the concept into the story. With each return, Grell was more professional and an even more competent Reaper. We could even see her co-workers coming to respect her more. By chapter 125 in 2017, Grell was given more to do in the series, and the audience saw how much she had grown and changed. The whole reason for this was Yana's understanding of queerness grew and changed as well. In a post from 2018, she remembered asking the actor playing Grell in the musical to please make her like a strong woman, asking that Grell be played as an independent career woman instead of what was seen in the first 54 chapters of the series. In 2022, chapter 180 did contain some language that Chibi felt was an attempt of shoehorning this information in, but I personally did not feel that way. However, that also might be due to my desensitization of this shoehorning kind of information concept, thanks to the non-stop superhero info dumps at the beginning of their movies. Then in 2024, the public school arc was available to watch, and the topic of Grell's pronouns came back to light. Thanks to the evolution of our queer terminology, we were able to watch Grell's transition into womanhood through the series. First her own acceptance of it, and then the other characters' acceptance of it. It gave us the option to connect with her during our own life transitions and changes. This was a very long game of telephone, where the big names said, "I don't like that, let's change it," as well as American and Japanese culture not always mixing well. Grell's pronouns were quite literally lost in translation. Depending on how those who are trans like to be referenced when referring to their past selves, the pronouns can vary. Sometimes they are perfectly fine with using the past pronouns for their past selves because those were the pronouns they were using at the time. Something like this could be taken into account when you hear someone use he, him for Grell if they never got past chapter 54. Sadly, we do not have an IRL Grell hanging out on Instagram who we could just message and easily ask, "Hey, how would you like me to reference you when speaking about you when it's before 2011? However, it was made very clear that Grell was already referencing themselves in the feminine as soon as we met her. This self-proclaimed lady knew who they were and simply did not have the language to properly explain it yet, because that was the same place her author was in. I feel that using he/him pronouns for Grell nowadays simply shows your age. Because when I dressed as Grell for my latest con, everyone in their late 20s plus used he/him for my cosplay. And everyone who used she/her, they were teenagers. Which generation you're in partially dictates how much you've kept up with the evolution of the Black Butler universe, as well as your language and terminology in general. So, if you don't want to sound old, please use she/her pronouns for this fabulous queen. That'll greatly help out all our other trans peeps out there who still don't feel validated. Grell being validated helps them feel validated just a little bit more. Thanks a bunch if you've made it all the way through this video. I greatly appreciate it. I'm sending you much love. And welcome to the madness. Thus, Yana chose a condom? Oh my god. Yeah, Grell would. Okay. Common gender-related stereotype. Stereotype. Why can't I get this sentence? Then the creators got further criticism. The